Pong Stars, and welcome to the Rathole. I'm your host, Commissioner Zack Eichten. In NFL news, it was a week full of injuries for NFL players across the league, including some really big names like Saquon Barkley and Christian McCaffrey, among many, many others. This injury volatility crept its way into our fantasy matchups as well, as people had to start some backups, as well as pick people up off of waivers who ended up getting hurt. And also, starting people who ended up getting injured, which really did impact a lot of scores this week. But despite those injuries, we did still have fantasy games to play, so let's get to the matchup recaps. In game number 1, we had the Revengers versus the Rock Plopstas in a high-scoring shootout between the number 1 and 2 ranked teams last week. Both teams ended up with over 140 points. In fact, the football club ran by John Stevens, this year named the Rock Plopstas, posted their highest ever score in team history. Let's start with the Revengers this week. Despite a fantastic score by QB Dak Prescott, who brought the team back from what seemed to be a sure loss against Atlanta, scored a massive 39.8 points. Despite an injury, McCaffrey also did score a great 22.8 points. However, just continuing his string of lackluster performance was running back Derrick Henry, who's held to a mere 8.4 points by the Jacksonville defense on 25 rushing attempts. Luckily, big scores by Tyler Higbee and Tyreek Hill were able to keep the Revengers in play going into Sunday night. Unfortunately for Noel, that's when the Rock Plopstas really ran away with the game. It wasn't hard to do either, with Aaron Jones scoring the second highest running back score in the keeper era so far with 43.6, only missing his own record from week 5 of 2019 by 2.1 points. Fig Newton, as John pointed out, had an amazing Sunday night. Nearly keeping up with Dak's massive score, finishing at 34.58 points. Oh, and let's not forget about those other running backs, Nick Chubb and Miles Sanders, scoring 25.8 and 18.6 points as well. Miles Sanders coming back with a big game off a injury in week 1 was a huge offseason acquisition for the Rock Plopstas. And they were able to overcome some disappointing play from the wide receiver set of Adams and Robinson in week 2. This is the first time in league history that John has actually started out 2-0 on a season. Let's get into game 2 then, where Brennan's Spring Chickens faced off against Sam's Google team names. This was another massive scoring game where the names were able to escape with a victory, 147.34 to 133.12. So let's talk about the Chickens first. First of all, man, Russell Wilson is just very good at being a quarterback. The man scored 33.42 points, which is really great. He had 5 touchdowns as well as 39 rushing yards. He's just an electric quarterback to watch. But the fun part is that nice stack in Seattle that Brennan's Spring Chickens have now, with the newly acquired Chris Carson catching a touchdown pass and scoring 18.3 points in his Chickens debut. Mike Evans also had a great week in Tampa Bay with 19.9 points. But really, the unfortunate piece for Brennan was in that second Tampa Bay player, Rob Gronkowski, who got 1 target that he did not catch and scored 0 points in Sunday's game. Had the Spring Chickens played backup tight end Mike Gesicki, he actually would have won this matchup, as Gesicki scored 23 points on the bench. Let's move over to the Google team names then. Sam had a much better than expected team this year. Truly unexpectedly good team. He's averaging 137.27 points per game through the first 2 games this season. Now, which is due to a variety of factors, but let's talk about those factors here. First, Kyler Murray is just looking great in Arizona, and the Arizona offense is looking great as well. Getting a great weapon in DeAndre Hopkins in the offseason has opened up the potential for this team in both the running and passing game, and it shows with Murray's 32.14 points in week 2. Secondly, injuries have helped this team out a ton, with both Marlon Mack and Phillip Lindsay out. Names RBs Melvin Gordon and Jonathan Taylor came out in lead back form in both games, scoring 15.4 and 18 points. However, the most exciting player to watch so far this year is Calvin Ridley, who's using his position as the number 2 receiver behind all-time great Julio Jones to rack up some massive fantasy scores. Ridley scored 26.4 points, just 3 points back from his massive score in week 1 as well. Ridley is on average 28 points per game thus far, and if he's able to keep up that production, the names will definitely be an opponent to watch in this league moving forward. Let's go to Game 3, where Tony's Fresh Prince of Bel-Air faced off against Josh's Not Trading Lamar. In the battle of the expansion teams, only one could walk away with a victory, and this was the closest one going into Monday night. The ending differential, 0.78 points in the closest matchup in league history. Just barely beating out the current record, or the now old record, I should say, of John beating Zach in 2016 by 0.8 points. Let's talk about Not Trading Lamar first. Apparently, the Houston defense is better than we're giving them credit for. In week 1, they held Mahomes to 20.44 points, and in week 2, held Lamar Jackson to 17.56 points. Unfortunately, that misprojection was kind of contagious on this squad, with misprojections from Gurley, from Chark, Campbell, who did get injured, and this team was hurting. Josh did pick up Paris Campbell after injuries became apparent with starters Chris Godwin and A.J. Brown. One bright spot on this team was David Montgomery, who did miss some snaps after getting injured, but was able to come back into the game and score 20.2 points. The biggest disappointment for this team was keeping keeper Leonard Fournette on the bench, scoring that 25.6 points on the bench, along with James Robinson and Deontay Johnson, both scoring big on the bench with 19.5 and 19.2. Those could be costly mistakes, if anything had happened differently in this match, but Josh was able to escape with 106.86 points and a win in week 2. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air had an 82% chance of coming back on Monday night, going into the game with 91.6 points. Despite some bragging that Hilaire and Breeze were both going to put up 20 points, they actually only ended up putting up 10 points and 14.48 points in week 2. Hilaire especially went up against a surprisingly good Chargers defense. Mark Ingram was able to score above his projections, though, which did help a little bit there with a 14.7. A disappointing 3.4 points from Julio Jones, though, was just a bummer. But luckily able to be overshadowed by a pair of other receivers in Stephon Diggs and Terry McLaurin, who scored a combined 47.3 points for the Fresh Prince. Going into Monday night, Tony needed keeper Drew Brees to score 15.26 points to win, and he was only able to score 14.48. Not good enough to get Tony a win in week 2. In Game 4, we had a surprising upset as the Dog Sniffers were able to pull out a win over the Gruesome Grinders. The Dog Sniffers have had some QB troubles this year, with Deshaun Watson posting only 14.7 in week 2 against Baltimore, including throwing a pick 6 to that Baltimore defense. Luckily, that Baltimore defense also plays for the Dog Sniffers, meaning that that tough score from Deshaun Watson ended up with 16 points for the Sniffers in the defensive category. James Conner was also luckily able to play despite a week 1 injury and scored a nice 19.1 points, picking up the slack of other starter Ronald Jones. The wide receiver set of Allen and Boyd netted 29.8 points for the team, and Kelsey had a better scoring week as well, scoring 19.5 points. One disappointing feature of the squad this week was Mark Andrews, who had the lead for tight end of the year so far, but then only posted 3.4 points. The Gruesome Grinders had a tough week, only scoring about 115 points in total. Disappointing play from the wide receivers, tight end, kicker, and defense contributed to this loss. Combined those 6 positions, including the flex, only scored 37.2 points. One bright spot, though, was Austin Eckler, who did score a 16.8 point score against a tough Kansas City defense. Mahomes also had a pretty good bounce back week, scoring 27.48 points. it just honestly was a disappointing night as Kamara was able to put up a solid 30-plus point performance, but it was not quite good enough to get the 40 that he needed going into Monday night. Such a large deficit that it was unable to be overcome by the Gruesome Grinders last week. In last week's Game of the Week, it was Zach's Gluten Freaks versus Lucas's Diamond Hose. Now, the story going into this week was the historic matchup, historic rivalry going into that week. But that all kind of took a turn, and the story actually of this matchup was injuries to the Diamond Hose players. It really always sucks to see a rivalry game be overshadowed by injuries to major players, but that's just exactly what happened. The Hose going into this week had Kenny Golladay and George Kittle out before the start of the game, as well as Courtland Sutton having injury concerns. The Hose ended up not playing Courtland Sutton, their first pick in the 2020 draft, as he was questionable, and he was kept on the bench. Unfortunately, it was not enough to have the actual Broncos keep Sutton on the bench this week, he ended up playing and tearing his ACL and is out for the rest of the season. On top of that, Saquon Barkley also tore his ACL in a game against the Bears on Sunday. This will relegate Barkley to the only non-COVID IR spot this season for the Diamond Hose. Essentially, all of these injury woes came down to a dismal showing for the Diamond Hose in Week 2, especially with Singletary, Mixon, and Hilton having below expectation games. One bright spot for this team is quarterback Matt Ryan, who loves throwing touchdown passes to Calvin Ridley, apparently, as well as a great receiver in Buffalo receiver John Brown, who had 82 yards on 4 receptions and a touchdown from Josh Allen. Going into Monday night, Lucas only had a 1% chance of winning, with Jared Cook and Will Lutz remaining. Unfortunately, it was not enough to overcome. Zach's Gluten Freaks had another good showing in Week 2 with a 99% chance of winning with just Josh Jacobs remaining on Monday night. An absolute star quarterback, Josh Allen, scored 34.48 points for the Freaks in Week 2, which was not the top score of all quarterbacks, but it was pretty close across the league. The 2 wide receiver starters of DeAndre Hopkins and DJ Moore both scored over 16 points, with other potential starter Tyler Lockett scoring 16 on the bench as well. Newly acquired running back Kenyon Drake carried 20 times for 86 yards, but did fail to score a touchdown. And best friend David Johnson only scored 6 points in Week 2 against a tough Baltimore defense. Someone who was the cornerstone of this team, Josh Jacobs, did not manage to get in the end zone on Monday night, but will be looking forward to making it back in there moving forward. Zach and the Freaks are now 3 games ahead in this historic rivalry. Now that matchups are out of the way from last week, let's head on over to the fun fact of the week. This week's fun fact of the week is brought to you by Total Points Scored. Typically in fantasy football, weeks 1 and 2 are the highest scoring weeks for many teams. The defenses aren't warmed up yet. There's not enough film. Injuries haven't occurred yet. Bye weeks aren't going on. So those first couple weeks are really big games for a lot of folks. Now, injuries have hit way harder this year. So this is kind of an interesting statistic for us. In our league, the scores from week 1 to week 2 usually drop. This year, for the first time since 2017, scores actually increased from week 1 to week 2. That is including the injuries that occurred over the course of week 2. Now, that is the total score of the league, all combined, so all of the teams combined. And it's the only ever second time that's happened. I would contribute a large part in this due to John's nearly record-shattering score. Definitely team record-shattering score. The only other time that this has happened where week 2 is more points than week 1 was when everybody did so badly in week 1 of 2017 that the highest score within a 6-team league didn't even break into triple digits. It was just a dismal week. So it's definitely interesting to see that trend of high scores is continuing into week 2, and we'll see if teams are able to keep it up going into week 3 and beyond. definitely pretty neat. We'll have to see how those injuries play out in the next couple weeks. Now, we had a few players outscore our current first place point getters in the quarterback, running back, tight end, and kicker spots. So let's quick highlight those. The new quarterback point leader is Dak Prescott, who scored 39.8 points after staging a dramatic comeback against the Falcons in Week 2. New running back leader is actually the winner from last year, Aaron Jones, who nearly broke his record from 2019 and scored 43.6 points in Week 2. New tight end leader is surprisingly not on the dog sniffers, and it is Tyler Higbee, who appeared to be a favorite target of Jared Goff in Week 2, scoring 25.9 points. And the new kicking leader is Justin Tucker, who scored 16 points in Week 2 for the Google team names. Now, we have a new segment this week from team owner Drew Mahowald. Let's go over to Drew now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first installment of the Mahowald Minute. It's a pretty historic moment, right? This is the first segment of the Mahowald Minute in the Rathole, which is, as we know, one of the most highly touted and respected weekly fantasy football league shows there is on the internet. So I'm glad to be a part of it. Commissioner Zack Eichten has very generously given me an entire minute, which I think is a very long time, for me to be talking about any fantasy-related topic, whether it's something bad or I'm upset about all these injuries maybe happening throughout the league, or it's something really good, like, Noel moving to 0-2. That's something that also needs to be discussed and emphasized. Now, of course, this came up because my last name starts with an M, minute starts with an M, so Mahowald Minute, it rolls off the tongue pretty easily. So that's just going to be in the show every week, and without further ado, this week I'd like to cover
Thanks, Drew. We're looking forward to having this as a segment regularly. Let's go over to a trade alert that came through on Monday morning between Lucas's Diamond Hose and Sam's Google team names. Lucas traded away Cortland Sutton, who was Lucas's first pick this year in the second round, who will be on IR for the remainder of the year, as well as a 2021 second round pick for Sam's Justin Jefferson, who was a sixth round pick in 2020. Let's head on over to trade talks between these two teams. All right, welcome, folks, to trade talks involving the GMs of the Diamond Hose and the Google team names. Lucas, I think that's you, and Sam, thanks for joining us.
Lucas Lawrenson could not be able to join us tonight.
All right, Spooky Mask Man and Sam Olson, thanks for joining us. So earlier today, both of you were involved in a surprise trade. There were no rumors of a trade between these two teams prior to when the trade was actually announced. So walk me through who initiated the trade talks between you two.
So I originally sent a message to Lucas once I heard Cortland Sutton was out for the rest of the year, and with the news of Saquon Barkley. It was more of just a feeler for what his team was looking at and what he needed, and just kind of wanted to see where things were.
All right, Scary Mask Man. As a spokesperson for the Diamond Hose, tell us what was going through the front office's mind as this trade came on the table.
Well, you see, Diamond Hose owner Lucas Lawrenson, the injury reserve spot was going to be taken by Saquon Barkley. Thus, there was no room for Cortland Sutton, and it was a no-brainer for him to get Justin Jefferson away for the second-round pick next year as well.
So yeah, let's talk about that pick. It's a 2021 second rounder of the Diamond Hose. In addition to that, Cortland Sutton for Justin Jefferson. Now, Justin Jefferson was a sixth round pick in 2020. What's that value look like as far as Justin Jefferson being essentially traded for a second-round draft pick.
Well, Lucas Lawrenson hasn't watched any football games this season, but he is hopeful that the rookie will perform well, and he is very happy to have him on the Diamond Hose.
Great. Sam, let's go back to you then. Obviously, with Keepergate, no wonder Lucas doesn't want to be on the program. With Keepergate, you were unable to keep Courtland Sutton after the league votes. So obviously this is a guy that you wanted on your team. I know he was snaked a little early from you in the draft. So tell me, what is that value then to you as a team owner, having someone who I assume you're going to try to keep if you can, taking up that IR spot for probably the remainder of the year?
Yeah, so that was kind of the exact thought process is I've got an IR spot for the rest of the year. I think I think Courtland Sutton rather is a keeper worthy wide receiver. Clearly with what I was trying to do right before the draft, that was kind of the whole plan. And then this year with this trade, it was to have him back on the roster, even if it isn't an IR spot for the rest of the year, as somebody that later into the season and into the off season that I'm going to look to keep. And then to get rid of Justin Jefferson, unfortunately, he's a great wide receiver, and I think he's got a bright future in front of him, but was certainly not in the running to make one of the top 5. And then after that, it was just trying to get picks back with some of the trades that I had made in last year's offseason, just trying to set myself up again for next year's draft with a guy that probably was never going to crack my starting lineup anyway. Gotcha. With my wide receivers, I'm pretty well set as for right now, at least.
All right. Scary Mask Man, is Justin Jefferson going to be a starter in the near future, do you think, for your squad?
Most likely.
Great. Well, anything else to add, either of you, before we wrap up?
No comment.
No. I think the Google team names are very excited with this trade, and we look forward to the rest of the season. I wish Justin Jefferson the best of luck. Unfortunately, it didn't work out with us, but hopefully he has a good showing for the Diamond Hose.
Thank you, team owner Sam Olsen.
All right, great.
Diamond Hose are just hoping.
What?
The Diamond Hose are just hoping to not get last this year.
So. All right, they're tanking for that first-round draft pick. You heard it here first. No, you didn't hear it here first. But thanks to both of you for joining. Let's head back on over to regularly scheduled program. Thanks, guys, for a great trade talk. I am seeing on my prompter here that we actually had a second trade alert this week, again involving Lucas Lawrenson. Lucas traded away 2 third-round picks in 2021, his own and Knowles, to Thomas for some tight end backup with Jonnu Smith. Let's head on over to Thomas and Lucas's trade talk now. And we're live. Thank you to Thomas and Lucas for joining me on this episode of Trade Talks. So the two of you have just recently made a trade where, Thomas, you got rid of Jonnu Smith, and Lucas, you sent over 2 picks for that tight end. So tell me, which one of you initiated this trade?
Definitely me.
Thomas. Okay. Yeah. So Thomas, one thing that you've been known for in the past is drafting a lot of one specific position, hoping to then capitalize via trades on that position. I think this is the first year that's worked for you. So walk me through what made Jonnu Smith worthwhile for trade bait with Lucas, in your opinion?
Well, I thought that he had a lot of potential, especially with one of his teammates out. I can't remember his name. He's a favorite target of the Titans right now. And for some reason, they're just not targeting Henry a lot either. So it's worked really well in Jonnu's favor. And I think that will continue going forward, especially for at least the next couple of weeks. And No secret that Lucas has about 5 injured players on his team, and he really needed someone to get him through those next couple of weeks. And for 2 third-round picks, I think that was really a win-win situation.
All right, Lucas, you've now traded away several picks over your couple trades here. Walk me through what's your strategy with these trades? You're getting rid of a lot of draft capital for next year.
Yeah, I think I'm just looking at the now rather than the future, because right now there's some serious problems that I need to address as far as the gaps in my team that are left to fill now that I've had to deal with 2 new injuries. And then I also had another player out for the last, 2 weeks with Galladay. So it's been rough. I don't know what's going on, who has been pissing in the Cheerios of my teammates and making sure that they get injured every time. I think that that's some conspiracy going on, I swear. But to sacrifice those 2 third-round picks for such a great player that has been performing really well, I think it'll help make up for the lack of points that I'm going to be scoring with missing such all-star players that unfortunately are now not able to perform for me. So I think.
So Lucas, you mentioned some injuries, but assuming George Kittle comes back in the near future, is there a chance that you're going to be running a 2 tight end set like Thomas?
Probably. If John Who keeps putting up big numbers, he's definitely going to be put in on my flex spot there. Because Kittle's kind of, once he's in, he's pretty much going to be permanently on my tight end spot. So it'll be nice to put John Hugh over in the flex position there. And as long as he keeps putting up big numbers, he's going to keep getting put there, because I honestly don't think anybody else on my bench is going to be putting up those big numbers. But I guess we just got to wait and see.
All right. Thomas, right now you have 3 third-round draft picks going into next year. Is there going to be any future trades coming, do you think, where those third-round draft picks are going to be used in those trades, maybe to buff up something like a running back position for you?
Possibly. I don't want to give anything away for now, but some trades might be in the works. Who really knows for certain, though?
I'm tweeting rumors right now.
I was going to say, you better tweet that.
All right, that's great. Thanks to both of you for joining me on Trade Talks. It's great to always get the thought process behind these trades, see what makes them work. So thanks again for joining.
All right. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Kamish.
Thanks, guys. That was good. Now let's get into the matchups. Oh, wait! There was another trade alert. Wasn't there? And it was a big one between Noel and Drew. So let's head on over to one more trade talk coming your way now. Drew, Noel, thank you for joining me on a segment of Trade Talks. Exciting stuff occurring with these trades that went through. And I think that this may be potentially one of the most league-defining trades that we've had so far, especially in the keeper era. So let's start with whoever wants to go first. Who initiated these trade talks?
I'll let you guess.
I'm going to guess you.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah, so I was coming from my position. I've had a couple of injuries this year already, mainly Michael Thomas and McCaffrey, as one could expect. And I'm not one to be complacent with my team. And although they performed well, I scored 143 points or whatever this week. It wasn't what I wanted. And looking to the future, I wanted to make sure I have at least one good running back for these upcoming weeks with McCaffrey out.
Okay.
And so I reached out to a couple people, and Drew was very interested, and so we we talked for actually quite a few hours this morning. I'm trying to get this trade done.
So one thing you said before we go over to Drew is you said that you wanted at least one good running back, which is why you wanted Alvin Kamara.
Well, okay.
Do you
sorry.
not consider? Do you not McCaffrey being out? Do you not consider that Derrick Henry is a good running back?
Sorry, no. So what I meant by good is tier 1,
Okay.
and not that Henry isn't. He just hasn't been performing to my expectations, and now that I trade him, he's probably going to score like 4 touchdowns against the Vikings because it's the Vikings.
Of course, because the Vikings are a bad team.
Yes, this is confirmed this year. And so, I mean, that's probably just how it's going to go. That kind of seems how this year's going for me. But we'll see what happens.
All right, Drew. So Noel initiated these trade talks. What was the driving factor for you wanting to trade, knowing your history of how trades have ended up for you?
Yeah, so my first thought was, I'm going to get rid of Austin Eckler in this trade, and that didn't even happen. So, but because he came up and brought the idea of initially it was something like Kamara and then Hill and Henry. And that kind of was like, okay, well, I'm not going to do that straight up, but something along those lines intrigued me. And so I, and he just kind of kept rolling with it, throwing ideas at me. And I, for the longest time in the deal was Kamara and Eckler. And I'm like, I can't do that. Like, that leaves me with nothing at running back besides Derrick Henry. And so eventually he kind of caved and took out Eckler, and that's when things sort of got serious and like, okay, this actually might be a deal that goes in. And so, I'm very wary and scared of the fact that Noel now has Alvin Kamara and Christian McCaffrey at his disposal on his roster. I look at, this is a trade also about the future, not just about this year. And I like having the Mahomes Tyreek Hill combo for the foreseeable future. And with the Saints probably not having Drew Brees after this year, eventually that's going to run out, right? I do think that'll hurt the value of both Thomas and Kamara. And so I think in the long run, it's better to have Chiefs than it is to have Saints. And then plus Derrick Henry is still getting 25 plus carries every week. So I do think I get a boost to my team immediately now in that I get Hill and Henry, but I think long term I think it's better to have Chiefs than Saints. Plus I got a couple picks from Noel as well.
Yeah, let's talk about a couple players that haven't been mentioned yet, which is J.K. Dobbins and Kareem Hunt. Drew, I want to know what you see in Kareem Hunt, and then sort of also looking at the value of J.K. Dobbins moving forward from Noel.
Yeah, so with Kareem Hunt, I don't like, obviously, that Nick Chubb is taking touches away from him. But in watching the Browns, he seems to be more of the pass-catching back of the team. And so when you look at the Browns in the past several years for the Browns, it's been a long time since they've been good, right? There's a lot of games where the game flow could turn into something where they pass the ball a lot, and that's where Hunt could be more involved maybe than Chubb. And so this wasn't the case last week against the Bengals where Chubb, took a lot of carries, but Hunt did get in there for a couple touchdowns. So I do think there's room for both of them. And I mean, it's one of those things too where sometimes you kind of have to play, think about the possibility of Nick Chubb getting hurt. And if that does happen, we're never going to wish injuries upon anybody. That is not what I do. I am not that kind of person. But
you have never done that ever.
I have never once wished an injury upon a player. But if that were to happen, Kareem Hunt would be an instant elite running back in fantasy. So it's one of those he has a high ceiling if that were to happen. But as long as Chubb is on the field for the Browns, his ceiling is limited, but I do think he gets enough snap to put up around 10 points a week, and that's a safe bet. And then if he gets a touchdown, that can boost it a little bit.
That's great. Noel, let's go to you. What do you see in J.K. Dobbins? Why are you excited to get this guy on the team?
So it's funny because at one point Drew had it down to me just getting Kamara and Thielen when I was giving him Henry and Hunt. And at this point, I told him
at this point you were giving me just a second round pick. And so
yeah.
it was,
as I said, there were a few hours this morning spent on this trade trying to figure out a good balance between the two. And at one point, I think I offered Drew Henry Hunt Hill and a second-round pick for like Dobbins. No, not Dobbins. Kamara and Thielen, and it wasn't accepted at some point. I don't know if it was sent or not, but over messages, I think it was sent as that. And so there were quite a few up and downs we had for this. And I told him, I was like, I'm going to need another running back. Whether that be Dobbins. I think I offered Lindsay at one point, just to have that backup running back, because on my bench I have quite a few receivers, but not many running backs. And as I mentioned at the post-draft video, I was super excited to draft Hunt, and so getting rid of him was a big blow for my team. And Drew mentioned that he was high on Dobbins, as he has the potential to take over that backfield.
Yep.
And that was seen in week 1, but with Edwards taking 20-some carries last week or 20-some touches, that backfield is just a mess. It's a wild card of Harbaugh as coach, having 3 running backs and Jackson as their running quarterback. So luckily I do think Dobbins has the potential to take over that backfield, as we have all mentioned. And so I just needed that last little secure piece for my bench. And luckily, I was able to snag that rookie from Drew. I mean, he did get 5 pieces to my 3, but
yeah. Let's talk about those last 2 pieces. A 2021 first rounder, Noel's first rounder, not Sam's. I noticed that, as well as a 2022 fourth rounder from Noel. So, how did it get decided that it was going to be Noel's first rounder versus Sam's?
I put no thought into that, to be honest with you. Now, I mean, I think it's too early in the season to even have a real conclusive idea of where those picks will be. Noel's team still is, despite the record, you have to face the reality here. The Noel's team is pretty loaded, right? So
yeah.
It's fair to expect that pick will be later in the first round. But, there's always that chance that if these injuries were to McCaffrey and Thomas injuries were to extend a little longer than usual. Even the slow start extends a little bit, and this thing sticks in the middle or even early first round. So I think, and again, I said the other day too, I think Sam's team is a lot better than I would have expected. So that could also be a late first round pick. So, and then the other pick's funny because I offered the same thing but a 2021 fourth, and Noel declined it, and I was like, well, let's just try it next year. And boom, that was all of a sudden it's like it's now pending. So Noel doesn't like to wait. He wants to get things done now, I guess. So,
Clearly.
There you go.
Alrighty. Well, any last thoughts between you two before we wrap up?
Just when Drew said that he wanted my 2021 fourth round, I needed a draft pick from him because he's taking 2 of mine this upcoming year.
Yep.
And I tried getting a second or third round from him, and he just wouldn't budge. And so when he sent that trade again, I only saw first and fourth round. I didn't even look to see if it was 2022 or whatever. And he said that, and I just went back and clicked accept right away because it's only 1 pick a year, and so
yeah, it's not too bad.
We will be able to get some wheeling and dealing done to get some more picks around.
Alrighty.
And I do get Thielen. I don't know if we talked about that, but I'm replacing
Hill with Thielen, which is interesting. But
garbage time, baby. Garbage time.
All right. Well, thanks to both of you for joining me for trade talk, and catch you when you inevitably do another large trade. All right. Thanks for a great discussion, guys. Let's move on over to this week's matchups. Wait! We need to take a look at the rankings first. Let's enjoy some nice, calming music while you look at these graphics for yourself. Tony, welcome to the Rathole. Finally, as an interviewee, it's exciting to have you here. So, tell us a little bit. Where are you at these days?
Well, I'm currently living in Chanhassen, where I've lived ever since I left St. John's.
Okay.
I have gone through 3 different jobs since I left.
That's a lot of jobs.
Yeah, I worked in accounting for like 6 months, decided I hated my life in accounting.
Mm-hmm.
Then I sold carpet, being totally colorblind. That didn't obviously pan out very well either. And then I switched to the auto industry and was selling software to car dealerships, and then now I'm selling marketing to car dealerships. So,
sounds like
the
a
Minnesota
blast.
territory.
Yeah,
Minnesota
a lot of
opened up,
changes.
so
yeah. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about fantasy football then. All right, the reason for the season, the reason we're here. Last year you had the best luck of the bad teams, I think is fair to say, in 2019. You got last place in the regular season. You snagged that first round pick, but you don't have to do the punishment. That's pretty good luck, I think, if you're gonna have a bad team. So, I'm always interested to know what would have been the punishment option that you would have taken if you had ended up in that last place spot.
I don't know. Last year's, I was looking at the punishments, and I was pretty convinced that I was going to be doing the 5K.
Really? Okay, 5K. That's not too bad. I mean, what would have been your embarrassing outfit? Had anything picked out?
Oh, I would have went and found like a prom dress or something.
That would have been great. Maybe we'll get to see it this year. I mean, who knows? It's certainly possible.
My team's too good for this.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Let's talk about this year then. This offseason, you were trying to make some moves to make your team better, get your team in better shape before the draft, and you were asking about a lot of trades. You actually got a trade with somebody the day before the draft. You got a trade with Drew Mahowald on September 7th. And you two exchanged just an annoying amount of picks between the two teams here. So tell me what led to this trade. What was the driving force for you to get this big pick switch?
My big thing is early in the draft, I didn't want to go from pick 1 to pick 20.
Okay.
Because there's so much talent in between there, but I felt like a lot of after, like, let's say the 3rd round, a lot of the talent after that, those picks is kind of like almost like a luck kind of thing.
Right.
Versus like a top 3 round pick is more like almost a sure thing, but not really a sure thing. So I really just wanted to move up from being the 10th pick in the 2nd round.
Okay. So you were willing to trade sort of those first picks in each of the subsequent rounds to move up that number of spots?
Exactly.
Okay. That's good to know. Finally, we get the insight on what really was driving that trade. Because I know a lot of people were just like, what? Why that many picks? So it's good to see. I heard there was a rumor going around that you were originally unwilling to give up that first pick in the 3rd round. What changed? What got you over the edge on that?
Well, because I was starting to talk to other people, trying to think about potentially then trading the 2nd pick. I was going to pair the early 2nd round pick from Drew and the 1st overall pick in the 3rd round for a 1st round pick. Is what
you weren't able to get that one. Yeah,
correct.
That's tough. Let's talk about the trade that happened right after the draft then. I know earlier, just past the keeper deadline, you were shopping around Todd Gurley a little bit and Julio Jones, trying to see if there was any interest from some other teams. But you were able to hook Josh on this trade, and Josh, who was hurting at the running back position, took Todd Gurley from you and exchanged you DeAndre Swift, the back out of Detroit. So how has that trade been working out for you so far? Do you have any regrets, or are you still happy about that trade you made?
See, with that trade, I don't see that it's going to be a quick kind of like turnaround depending on how it goes for either me or Josh. Just because Gurley, you never know what could happen with his knees.
Right.
Could be next week, could be a year down the road. But I was looking at it that my team, for rebuilding purposes, being that I was last team in the league, I felt like Swift is going to be the number one back in Detroit later this year or for sure probably next year.
So you're already looking at Swift as a keeper then?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Makes sense. No, I just want to make sure. I like getting people on the record on who they think their keepers are. It makes my life easier later. So that's great.
See, unless if some other thing were to happen that I got some other back that's going to be a number one, like, I don't know. It all depends on that. But I looked at it that I really probably wasn't going to be keeping Gurley next year just because who knows what could happen.
Right.
And then the swap of picks in that, I was like, well, why not move up? Because I felt like that trade was a pretty even trade around the board.
Yeah, I think most
Josh
people
needed it for now.
Yeah.
Needed rebuilding.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people thought it was out of the gate pretty even, just depending on who or sort of what the mindset of this year was for that team. So let's talk about some controversy in the league there, Tony. We got to bring it up in the interview here. Keepergate came to a head when you and Lucas made a trade where you were attempting to use a ruling to switch out keepers, clearly and obviously trying to do that. So is there anything that you want to say to the folks watching at home defending your actions in the Keepergate scandal?
I'm going to be honest, there really is no defending that. It was pretty cut and dry what I was trying to do, especially after, like, what was it, 2 nights before when I was trying to change my keepers or whatnot.
Yep.
No, so, I mean, I understand it. I get it. It is what it is. And with my trade with Drew, if I didn't make that trade, I felt like I could have gotten – since I traded out of that first spot in each of the draft or each of the rounds, a lot of the picks down the line were taken like 3 picks before where Drew would have picked. So I would have gotten who I wanted, but I don't know. I would have gotten Josh Allen in whatever round it was if I didn't make the trade with Drew.
Probably. Well, that's tough to see for you. But let's move on to something a little bit more fun. Current season, you are having a very interesting year. You have had 2 extremely close games so far. And the first one, you beat Noel, someone who you never lost to, defending champ. What's that feeling like, being undefeated against a defending champ?
Well, I mean, it's phenomenal, but, I mean, his team's kind of garbage now. So, with McCaffrey being out, we'll see.
Did you see the trade from earlier where he did get Alvin Kamara?
He did, and that's what makes that team even, I'd say, more scary with Kamara versus having Derrick Henry. And, I mean, Adam Thielen could still be a top 5 wide receiver in the league. You never know if they figure things out at quarterback.
If they figure, and with how much garbage time points that someone can score, it's possible that Thielen does get a lot of points in late games this year. So it's definitely interesting. Obviously, you were pretty excited to win, but let's talk about a little bit of heartbreak in week 2 here. So you lost to just a heartbreaking loss to not trading Lamar, Josh Palingo's team. By 0.78 points, which I don't know if you know this, is the lowest, is the tightest final score in league history of any game across all 6 years now. I'm not sure if that makes you feel better or not, but I want to get your thoughts and reactions to week 2 in 2020.
Well, I mean, the hardest part about it is obviously, I was on the other side of it week 1 with Noel, with Mike Thomas only getting 3 points or whatever it was. But having Julio Jones only get me 3 points was kind of rough. And then going into looking at it that I only needed Drew Brees to get me like 15 or 16 points. With the Hall of Fame quarterback, you'd think more often than not that it's going to be almost a sure thing of that. And then it came down to the 2-minute warning, and I was like, gosh, he's going to get a couple shots, and it just did not go well.
Yeah, I think, are there any lineup changes that you would have made looking back? Anybody that you were like on the fence about starting that you didn't start, anything like that?
I really wasn't. I was pretty completely positive on my starting lineup. I mean, I'm never going to sit Julio Jones unless it's his bye week, just because the upside there is just too much.
Yeah.
Like, with Julio Jones, it doesn't matter what cornerbacks he's up against. He's proven time and time again that he can get points against anyone.
Well, right. I mean, since 2014, I think Julio's been a top 5 back every year, except for one, in which case he was the number 9 back. So, or wide receiver, I mean. That you can't sit that talent. Absolutely, completely agree with you.
I mean, the only thought of maybe a change was going to be Hawkinson for Henry, which, I mean, looking back on it, if I would have done Henry instead of Hawkinson, I would have won by roughly 0.7 points.
that's a tough pill to swallow. I know. Looking back and doing the shoulda, coulda, woulda, all that stuff. But if Josh could do that too, though, he would have had 145 points. So it would have been a much different game. Let's look ahead to week 3 and 4. So the 4 teams you have to play twice this year. Week 3 you have Drew Mahowald and the Gruesome Grinders. And then in week 4, you have John's Rock Plopstas. Personally, in my opinion, I think you have the hardest strength of schedule in the league this year, just based on the randomization, which is tough for you. But who are you most worried about facing out of those guys? And what's your strategy to win these next 2 games?
Well, I mean, I'm quite happy at the trade that happened today because, I mean, I was looking at it like next week with Drew having Kamara and me having Drew Brees, the points, there's a very good chance that the points are going to cancel out.
Right.
Which, I mean, well, I shouldn't say cancel out. Kamara's going to get more points. But Drew Brees isn't
But if you're
putting up the numbers.
Drew Brees to rack up those points and he's passing to you, the guy across from you, that's tough.
Right. But, I mean, when you look at John's team, he's put up points every week, and it's just stupid. Of the amount of points that he had last week, he had 90 points by his 3 running backs or whatever it was. So I mean, I'd say of the next couple weeks, I'm more worried to face off against John's team, just because there's so much potential sitting there.
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to have to face those first 4 teams twice. Out of those 4 first teams, who are you most worried about facing for the second time?
I'd say John's. I'm not worried about Noel's team. I beat him every time.
All right. That's good. All right. So going into your season then, the major name coming out of your team was and still is Clyde Edwards-Helaire, right? Namesake of your team seems like the cornerstone piece of what you're going for this year. However, I wanted to just dive a little bit deeper into what the actual point breakdown is for your squad this year. So from your running backs, you've scored 22.42% of your total points. And from your wide receivers, you've actually scored 43.57% of your points. How are your wide receivers stacking up this year in your mind? And do you anticipate that evening out as the year moves forward?
I find it kind of tough because more than likely I'm going to be playing 3 receivers each week unless DeAndre Swift completely takes over as the number 1 back. So, I mean, I don't really see that evening out that much. The only way it would even out is if something happened at quarterback. I'd say quarterback and the other guys kind of chipping in to lower the receivers' marks, I guess.
Makes sense. Yeah, I've personally been pretty impressed with Stephon Diggs. You know, I'm a beneficiary of that myself on my squad with Josh Allen. So I'm happy that he's over there. He had a really big game last week, you know, one more catch for 2 yards. Well, 3 yards for you could have sent you over the edge. So it's always a tough one.
That's how I look at it with every one of my guys last week. If Julio Jones would have gotten another catch,
yep,
I would have won. If Ingram maybe ran for another 6 yards or whatever, if everyone pitched in an extra yard, I would have won.
Yep, that's so tough. All right, so let's talk about Drew Brees then. Drew Brees being on your team, obviously, is something that you, in the summer, it seemed we're okay with, and then there was the whole Keepergate issue where you were trying to change him out. Over the last 2 weeks, he's scored 14.4 points and 14.48 points. Is there any danger of your keeper QB losing his starting spot moving ahead?
I would say probably. Not going to go too far into it, but there is a change that is probably going to be happening, especially until Michael Thomas comes back, is what I'd say.
Gotcha.
Just because without having Thomas, it's one less target, and he clearly can't do it.
All right. That's good to know. Let's see. What do we got here? Okay. This is my favorite part of the interview. We do this every week. It's the would you rather question. All right. So, Tony, would you rather have the first pick every year, essentially guaranteeing that you miss playoffs for the next 3 years? Or would you rather be in playoffs, never guaranteed anything in the playoff run, and definitely get that worst drafting spot every year for the next 3 years?
Well, I look at it that 3 years of the number one overall pick, I'm not going to be able to keep everyone. Like, I'd be able to keep all 4 of the people that I've had 4 consecutive years at number one.
Yep.
Then I'm going to lose out on Diggs, Jones, other people along the road. I'd rather take playoffs.
All right. You always get that chance, that championship run. You know, I can't say I blame you. I'd probably do the same thing in your position. But
playoffs, there's too much winning potential. I mean, my team's probably a couple years out of actually being there, but we'll see.
I wanted to just I'm realizing I forgot to ask you one question. And it's about the rankings that you submitted for, you know, week number 3 here. You submitted rankings that you have yourself is number 3 overall going into week 3. Defend yourself. How does that happen?
I would say partially because I beat the best team in the league.
Okay.
So I felt like it was unjust that I did not move up very high in the rankings at all.
Okay.
So that had a big part to it. That I barely lost from Josh's team, which also is in my opinion, a top 4 team.
Yeah, you ranked them 4th. So
yep. So, and then I mean, I don't know. We'll see how it plays out next week. If I can happen to get a win against Drew's team, I might be moving it up a little bit higher. Who knows?
All right. You know
and another side note is that I did want to remove myself from being the last place spot.
Yeah, you and Lucas both use outliers to try to move yourself up. Lucas also had himself ranked at number 3 this week. Questionable, to say the least. But Lucas also had me ranked at number 1, which is also questionable. So questionable all around.
Yeah, I felt like my other rankings, other than me being 3rd, are probably pretty accurate and pretty close. I mean, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, you ranked me 8th, which is also a questionable decision. I feel like you just went with us, but that's all right. you know, you got to have faith in your own team, and very clearly you do. I'm excited to see where the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air takes us in 2020. And, you know, thanks for joining me today on the Rathole.
Championship run right here.
Let's move on to matchups for real this time, for reals, guys. In game one, let's go there first. We have the ranked number 2 Gluten Freaks versus the third ranked Spring Chickens. Historically, when these two face off, they are extremely close matchups. All time, they're tied at a record of 7-7, with Brennan holding a slim points lead at 1517.62 to 1508.96. This is one of, if not the closest records in league history. Since the start of the keeper era, Brennan has gone 1-0 against Zack last year in week 5, beating the Gluten Freaks 114.22 to 100.76. The last time either of these teams did not have a triple-digit score was when they were playing each other in 2016. Let's talk about the teams here first. This will be the first time in the keeper era that Kenyon Drake and Chris Carson will face off against their former teams. The Spring Chickens will be looking to get the edge in record as Russell Wilson continues to dominate opponents and continues to be a fantasy points machine as well. Wilson and Carson will go against the Dallas defense, who allowed Matt Ryan to throw 4 touchdown passes and Zeke to get 89 rushing yards and a touchdown off of 22 carries. If that defense plays like that again against a talented Seattle team, this stack of players could be the difference in this matchup. One question mark will be Raheem Mostert, one of the many players who got injured last week. The Chickens' first-round pick will likely be out for the matchup in week 3, ensuring that a backup will need to fill that role in the flex position for this team. It really is anyone's guess who could be filling that role, but the betting folks would be wise to place money on Odell Beckham Jr. or Julian Edelman. Both had great games on a lot of points on the bench for the Spring Chickens in week 2. The Gluten Freaks are coming off of a 2-game win streak, which is exactly where they found themselves last year before going on a 3-game losing streak starting in week 3. This week, Josh Jacobs, leading the team, will be facing off against New England, who's been giving up big points on defense and having to rely on Cam Newton to try to rescue them. Additionally, Josh Allen, the second Josh on the team, has been playing phenomenally and will be playing against the Rams. Another stack of players could work well for this team in Arizona players DeAndre Hopkins and Kenyon Drake. No matter how that team scores, one of them is likely to be the beneficiary of those points, unless, of course, Kyler Murray just keeps running it himself. I mean, come on, Kyler, cut that out. Let's head on into matchup number 2 then. The Google team names will be facing off against the Diamond Hose. In what would be seen as stunning last year, we actually have the Google team names ranked higher than the Diamond Hose going into week 3. The names are ranked 6th going into week 3, their highest ever ranking in the Pong Stars League, ranked against the number 10th ranked Diamond Hose, their lowest ever ranking in the league. Lucas currently leads their all-time matchups 9-5 with a point edge of 1598.86 to 1480.66. Really just a massive difference there. Let's talk about the Diamond Hose first. Lucas has suffered greatly at the hands of the injury gods since the start of the season. But we'll be looking to the waiver wire, hopefully to fix that, as well as, you know, a little bit of prayer to those injury gods. The player to watch on this team is 10th round pick John Brown, who's benefiting greatly from Josh Allen's improved performance, as well as Stephon Diggs, taking some coverage away from him. This week, Brown goes up against a tougher Rams defense, but has gotten 16 points the past 2 weeks. And if he can continue to get that level of performance and the rest of the team shapes up, this team could still be really good. For the Google team names, it all comes down to 2 names, Ridley and Murray. These 2 superstar players are the clear pieces to the puzzle on making Sam a scary team. And it certainly doesn't hurt that the injury gods, whatever they took away from Lucas, They must have given all that mojo right into the Google team names. Both Jonathan Taylor and Melvin Gordon performed well in the absence of their running back committee partners, and will be looking to do the same in week 3. Matchup number 3 is potentially the toughest matchup to date, in my opinion. It pits 4th-ranked team, the Revengers, against 5th-ranked team, Not Trading Lamar. Noel is currently up 2-0 all-time against Josh, having met twice last year, once in regular and once in postseason play. And Noel currently leads the points for 260.45 to 199.5. Josh is poised to score his 200th point against the reigning champ. Let's talk about Not Trading Lamar first. In week 2, the team barely escaped the wrath of Tony putting a curse on everybody to get a really bad score against him, as Josh won the closest ever matchup in league history by 0.78 points. Josh actually now holds the largest victory margin and the smallest victory margin in league history. This week he faces off against an absolute rockstar team who is looking for some vindication after going 0-2 to start. Lamar Jackson will need to step up big time against Kansas City on Monday night to keep this team in contention. A 17.56 point game just really won't be good enough for Not Trading Lamar this week. Reports are also starting to look better for starting receiver Chris Godwin, who is looking to be clear of the concussion protocol going into week 3. There's still no word on if A.J. Brown will be able to suit up, though. It would be a great matchup against a pretty abysmal Minnesota defense if he was able to. For the Revengers, this is a must-win week to get the season back on track. Despite posting the 3rd highest score in week 2, the Revengers lost to the Rock Plopses when that squad dropped nearly 190 points on the Revengers. McCaffrey getting injured definitely makes this a harder game, but wait! There was a big trade to get Alvin Kamara on the team, and was made just in time to get that in for week 3. Though the team is injury-ridden in the elite player level, I think Noel still has the backups, especially with that trade earlier, to make this still a really scary team. Just because he's 0-2 does not mean that he does not have elite-level players in this team. Let's head on over to game number 4, where the 7th-ranked Gruesome Grinders take on the number 9 Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Drew's team has gone 0-2 to start the season, whereas Tony has walked away 1-1 after 2 extremely close games in weeks 1 and 2. Drew historically has done well against Tony, going 2-0 with 247.74 points to Tony's 189.44. The Fresh Prince namesake did not play to a high enough standard in week 2 to get a victory for Tony, scoring only 10 points. Elaire will need to step up his game along with veteran Drew Brees in order to stay competitive. Luckily, the wide receiver set on this team is defying expectations, including Stephon Diggs, who's currently ranked number 4 in PPR formats. Stephon is benefiting, much like John Brown, from excellent play from Josh Allen, and Diggs is having great success in Buffalo, as well as on the Fresh Prince squad. Now, Drew made an interesting trade this week where he traded away top back Alvin Kamara, as well as hometown favorite Adam Thielen and rookie J.K. Dobbins for new running back 1 in Derrick Henry, wide receiver Tyreek Hill, and backup running back Kareem Hunt. These moves honestly just completely change up the face of this squad, as well as the outlook for this team. Henry has been on a bit of a struggle the first 2 weeks, and will look to turn it around playing against just a completely dismal Vikings defense. Tyreek Hill will also need to be looked at as a major weapon, but his week 3 debut for the Gruesome Grinders, he faces a tough Baltimore defense who's been the top scoring defense in both weeks leading up to week 3. It will definitely be interesting to see how Hill, Henry, and Hunt handle being on a new squad starting week 3. Finally, let's take a look at the Pong Stars Game of the Week. This week, the Pong Stars game of the week is number 1 ranked team, the Rock Plopstas, against number 8 ranked team, the Dog Sniffers, in the Unmade Bed Bowl. These are the only 2 team owners who have ever lived individually with me. So they will be fighting for a new traveling trophy between these 2 teams that I made with Sam's graphic help. Zach's Unmade Bed. This trophy is definitely one that both are going to want to have in their trophy case. Historically, Thomas brings the thunder against John, with Thomas leading with an overall record of 8-5 against John, and holding the points for record at 1256.64 to 1209.34. Now, the Dog Sniffers have been heartily impacted by injuries, but to make up for that, last week, team owner Thomas Strand put down a lot of fab money, $36 actually, on running backs to replace those who were injured. Now, the combined points for those 2 backs in week 2, negative 0.5. Not exactly what you want from those big budget acquisitions. But looking ahead, James Conner, scored 19.1 points despite an injury in week 2, and will be available to start in week 3. Hopefully, Deshaun Watson also picks up his game, and the 2 tight end set of Kelsey and Andrews will work well again in week 3. So far, those 2 haven't matched up on their boom weeks, so we'll see if they're able to do it moving forward. The Rock Plopstas are on an absolute tear, however, through the league. They started the season in rank number 3 and have worked their way up to a clear number 1 spot, and it's really been incredible to watch. The absolute points domination of either Devontae Adams or Aaron Jones each week puts this team into a pretty scary position for anybody facing off against them. One player I'm excited to watch, though, is Darren Waller, who had a monster game over New Orleans on Monday night, and he will face off against New England. This should be a really exciting matchup for the folks watching at home. Now that we have done the matchup previews, let's head on over to the Pong Stars Pick'em.
That's right. This is
folks, welcome to the Pong Stars Pick'em. We have 5 of our contestants here with us this week. We are going to be going through the 5 matchups. Each of us are going to say who we pick and then which one is going to be our lock. And when we have a lock, we will explain why we think that team is a lock to win. One of the rules that we're playing by is that we are not allowed to lock our own teams. So we have to actually look and, participate in the rest of the league too. So let's start out with game number 1. Game number 1 is the Gluten Freaks versus the Spring Chickens. Noel, let's start with you. Who are you taking in the Gluten Freaks versus Spring Chickens?
Sounds good, boss. I'm going to take the people that can't eat bread. I'm taking the Gluten Freaks over the Spring Chickens, mainly because of the depth that they have at running back.
That's great. John, let's go over to you. Game number 1, who are you taking?
I am also taking the Gluten Freaks. I'm not betting against them again like I did this week. Dumb choice.
A historic rivalry. I can't blame you against Lucas. So, Sam, we'll go over to you. Gluten Freaks versus Spring Chickens.
I've got the Gluten Freaks, and that is my lock. I think with Josh Allen, Josh Jacobs, and DeAndre Hopkins, they're just that overpowering. And I experienced it week 1, getting absolutely pummeled. So they're my lock this week.
Great. All right, Drew, go over to for the Gluten Freaks versus the Spring Chickens.
Yeah, that's a sweep for the Gluten Freaks. I got them winning next week over the Spring Chickens.
Wonderful. And I am going to take my own team, not my lock, but Brennan, I don't know. I think that trade with Kenyon Drake is going to come back to bite you in week 3 here. So let's move on to game number 2. We have the Google team names versus the Diamond Hose. We'll do a little bit of a backwards here. John, you can go first on this one.
I am going to take the Google team names, and they're actually going to be my lock this week. I think Sam might be the one guy who's really benefited from injuries, with both Jonathan Taylor and Melvin Gordon now being pretty much the exclusive backs in their systems. And then also Lucas, just too many injuries. So I'm rolling with the Google team names as my lock this week.
All right. I will go next here. I'm also taking the Google team names. I was a big Google team names believer in week 2 as well. I thought that was going to be a big score, and I was correct over the Spring Chickens. And as John mentioned, just with injuries, I think that the names are benefiting from that, and the Diamond Hose are definitely not. So the Google team names are my lock for week number 3. Drew, who do you got?
I have the Google team names. Shout out to Sam, the pleasant surprise of the year so far, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Samuel, who you got?
I'm going to also go with the Google team names. I couldn't put them as my lock, even though I wanted to, but I think I've got a good shot against Lucas this week.
That's great. Noel, Google team names versus the Diamond Hose?
Yep, I'm going with Google team names just because of the amount of Kukak injuries there are this year already.
Yeah, that's tough injuries for the Diamond Hose. Absolutely. Hopefully that trade with getting Justin Jefferson, potential starter for the Diamond Hose, we'll see how that benefits.
Let's go on. I'll give you a better wide receiver than that.
Let's go down to game number 3, which is the Revengers versus not trading Lamar. I think this is one of the tougher ones that we're going to have to pick from in week 3 here. So Sam, let's start with you.
Honestly, I think this might be one of the toughest games to pick all year. And I don't know if they play each other twice or not. But, so I think this is going to be one of those matchups that's just an absolute coin flip. I've got the Revengers, though, this week. Narrowly the Revengers.
All right. Noel, it's your team. Who do you got in the Revengers versus not trading Lamar?
Yeah, it's tough. Not only is Kukak dealing with some injuries, I am as well. Mine aren't season ending, luckily. But I think I'm gonna pull it out next week. Get my first win of the season in week 3.
All right. Drew, who do you got in the Revengers versus not trading Lamar?
So coming into this, I was gonna pick the Revengers. The more I look at it, I'm gonna go with not trading Lamar. So it's not a lock, so I'm talking too long, but not trading Lamar is my pick.
All right. I will go next. This is, I think, as Sam and Noel both said, this is going to be toughest game of the year potentially so far to pick from. But I think that the injury level and depth level between the two teams, both have had injuries that have impacted their starters. Noel's are more significant, so I'm picking not trading Lamar. John, over to you.
I am also going to go with not trading Lamar. Sorry, Noel, but I think the injuries are just too much, and I don't think Kareem Hunt is going to perform as well now that he's in Noel's starting lineup.
Sounds great. All right, we had 2 games left. Let's go down to game number 4, the Fresh Prince of Hilaire versus the Gruesome Grinders. Let's see, who hasn't started yet? Noel, you haven't started yet. Nope, you did. John, you haven't started yet.
I'll take the Gruesome Grinders this week.
All right, Drew, who do you got?
I have my own team, the Gruesome Grinders. They'll be ready to grind one out finally this year in the win column.
Perfect. Sam, who do you got in the Fresh Prince versus the Gruesome Grinders?
I've got the Gruesome Grinders.
All right. Quick and easy. Noel, Fresh Prince or Gruesome Grinders?
The GGs.
All right. And it's going to be a GG from me as well, taking the Gruesome Grinders over the Fresh Prince of Hilaire. Now we have the game of the week, game number 5, which is the Rock Plopstas versus the Dog Sniffers. Obviously facing off for the Zack's Unmade Bed Trophy, roommate battle of Zack's roommates. So it's going to be a tough matchup between these two rivals. Drew, who do you got in Rock Plopstas versus the Dog Sniffers?
Lock of the week, Rock Plopstas over the Dog Sniffers. My number 1 power ranking team as well, the Rock Plopstas. This team's loaded, man. Partially thanks to me for trading with those star players. But got to call it what it is. This team is surging and is feeling it right now. And I do not believe in the Dog Sniffers have the firepower to catch up.
All right. I am also going to take the Rock Plopstas. I think the Dog Sniffers surprised all of us by posting over 100 points in week 2, which was good, but still, I don't think that's going to be a repeatable thing. So definitely taking the Rock Plopsters. John, who do you got in your own game?
Yep, I'm going to take myself. I'm going to take myself every week this year, just like I did last year. A little bit more confidence this year. My team's a little better, so hopefully that'll work out for me more this year. But yeah, I'm going to roll with myself.
All right, Noel, head over to you. Rock Plopses or the Dog Sniffers?
I'm going to go with the underdog. I'm going with the Dog Sniffers.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I'm losing in the points category in Pick'em. And so trying to catch up, trying to win another Pick'em in a row. I'm going with the underdog.
All right.
Definitely not a revenge pick.
Definitely not at all. All right, Sam. Last one, and then we will go over to the leaderboard for points this week.
I have got the Rock Plopsters. I think it's going to be, again, very, very close. Rivalry game. The Dog Sniffers are going to show up, but I think the Rock Plopsters have just got too much firepower.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for joining. Thomas wasn't able to make it for this one, but his picks will be at the bottom right now. Great. Good. Yeah, good. Love to see that. So, and right up next is the leaderboard. We're through 2 weeks, 10 possible points so far, and it is a close one. So thanks all for joining, and we will catch you next week. All right, thanks guys for a great Pong Stars Pick'em. I hope that obviously I hope that I win. So good enough luck that my teams that I picked win this week. That's all we have for the Rathole this week. I'm your host, Commissioner Zack Eichten, and remember to vote.
It starts recording.
Like this.
Terrible. This is
Drew, I'm kind of turned on, not going to lie.
what? All right.
When isn't Null turned on?
That's a great question.
Whoa. You don't have to share a wall with him.
Sam, you don't share a wall with me either.
No. All right.
I share a wall with your closet.
Here we go.
Sam, have more flags on your wall. Oh wait, you can't.
There is even more. See,
All right. Anyway, let's start.
Yep.